Okay, so the restricted license, again, you could only renew it twice. So the proposed changes that we're doing is to have all of them continuous and renewable. Okay? That's just one change for this. That would mean if you would obtain a license and keep your license, you would be restricted in the settings in which you could work depending on which one you had. Also, you must continue your certification just like you need to continue your licensure. Okay, I know some of you are really interested in some of these. We've, 4 levels, hearing, deaf, intermediate, advanced. What's all required in that? So I'm going to go into that here. So intermediate hearing interpreters, I'll explain first. And I will be comparing them to the restricted license for hearing interpreters now. So currently, the restricted license for hearing interpreters within the state of Wisconsin requires that you have an associate's degree for sign language interpreting or a Ready-B cert or an ITP certificate. Skill is proved through the WITA, and the WITA has 2 portions, interpreting and transliteration, and you need to get either a 2 or higher in interpreting or a 2 or higher in intermediate, so it could be mixed. So now, recently, the state of Wisconsin will be accepting the BEI Basic as replacement for the WITA. You must be a member of RID, either an associate or a student member, and you must pass the RID knowledge exam. Okay, so that aside, what we're proposing to change. You must have a bachelor's degree and an ITP certificate. The bachelor's degree could be in your field of choice, but it must be paired with an ITP certificate. You could obtain them together or separately, but it is a minimum of a bachelor's degree for education. You must also become certified if you choose through the BEI Basic and or equivalent, because we do understand that other states have something different. Michigan doesn't have basic, advanced, or master. They call it certification 1, 2, and 3. So again, we're trying to keep everything clear for you. I know some of you are really feeling stuck. Like, oh no, I don't have a 4-year degree, I only have a 2-year degree, or I already passed the BEI Basic, but I don't have a bachelor's degree. I understand that. So that group of people, that's just one set of requirements. We do have alternatives. The first alternative that I'm going to go into discussion about, so if you have an associate's degree in sign language interpreting, just an associate's degree before the law is passed, and you become certified through BEI, and you have the basic, those 2 would permit you to gain licensure. Also, if you've been certified BEI Basic for quite some time, because some people are, but you don't have the minimum educational requirement in this law, you could still obtain the license, as long as you had it prior to the law passing. Okay, that aside, now I'm going to focus on the advanced for hearing interpreters. So currently, again, you must have an associate's degree for that license, an ITP certificate of completion, or an ITP certificate of completion, and any valid RID certification. Let me emphasize any, and why that's important. RID has a list of certifications, not just the NIC. They have oral transliteration, OTC. They have, let's see what else, RID educational, K through 12 certification. They have a variety of certifications. Under our current law, that's a loophole, people could use those certifications that don't really match the spirit of the law itself. And yeah. So let me see. Again, any valid certification from RID and NAD. And again, NAD doesn't provide a certification anymore because that was transitioned over to RID. So that was another thing that we'll have to update. And recently they've accepted the BEI Advanced and Master for that license. The proposed changes, I'm so excited. The bachelor's degree, again, there is no mandated field and a certificate of completion from the ITP. You can obtain certification through RID NIC, the BEI Advanced, or the BEI Master. So if you have a bachelor's degree and a certificate in ITP and one of these 3 certifications, you can obtain licensure. Some of you may be thinking or taking a look at this and wondering what to do if you need an alternative pathway. So if you're certified before this law passes, you will not have to follow these requirements. You will automatically be grandfathered into it. Let me just go back for a second to BEI and RID. We had to think about possibly asking people to go outside of state as well. We had to consider interpreters who were coming in from out of state, who had been certified for a long period of time and complied with their own state requirements that may not be with us too, so we had to take into account how we would accommodate these individuals as well. So that's why we created a variety of options to enfold them into Wisconsin. So let's see, we have the intermediate for deaf requirements, for deaf interpreters and their requirements. Now it's different from hearing interpreters, and I'll get into that later. Oh, wait, what was that? Is that from live streaming? Oh. Can you please make sure to put your mute on, please? Thank you. Okay. Someone just joined, maybe. Okay, I'll continue. Now, some deaf interpreters have, so for the restrictive license, you must have a high school diploma or equivalent and proof of being deaf from a physician, and training of 56 hours. 56 hours of general training and 40 in general, and 8 in the role of functioning of deaf interpreters, and 8 in professional ethics. All right, and now you need 3 letters of recommendation. That includes 40 hours of mentoring. Let's see. But that also includes 20 hours of observation and 10 hours of deaf interpreter observation. And let me see, lastly, you must be a member of RID. So that's the current law. So the proposed changes that we've worked on, let me see, we still require a high school degree or equivalent. The deaf interpreter group had a lot of discussion. It seems like there's not a lot of training for deaf interpreters in general, and that could really impact the community and the ability for people to obtain and become deaf interpreters. So 16 hours of general training, sponsored by RID or BEI training, to be specific. And they must have a transcript to prove that they took ASL Linguistics 1 and 2, or the equivalent of those classes. 40 hours specifically in deaf interpreter training, approved by the board, SLEEP, the Interpreter Examining Board. Let's see, also a minimum of 2 letters of recommendation. Now understand, these 2 letters can be certified and licensed deaf interpreters, and including 20 hours of observation, 25 hours of observation. We're almost done, I promise. Now the advanced deaf interpreters, the advanced certified deaf interpreters. So currently, you need, what is in current law is that you need proof of deafness by a physician, certification from RID, or other valid certifications from DSPS as approval. So the proposed law is an associate's degree or minimum, or an alternative pathway of education as determined by the board, and then certified by either RID or its successor in any equivalent certification as determined by the board. Okay, I know. Let's take a break for our eyes. Fun, huh? I'm just gonna throw that out there. Okay, so I was curious, how many interpreters are licensed here in the state of Wisconsin? But really, in total, who have a Wisconsin license is 422 people. 79 are restricted, 343 are renewable licenses. So 422, from that 422, 292 are permanent residents within Wisconsin. That means 130 are credentialed people that live outside of the state. So outside of state, that means that they could be working with VRI, they could be in Minnesota and cross the border, they could be in Illinois and come up into Wisconsin and work. It could really be anything, and here you go. This is all over the country, so you can see they are everywhere. One in Alaska, but really it didn't fit on the page, so I didn't get it in there. I'm sorry, but so there's one in Alaska, just so you know. There's an Alaska person. So yeah. So where can people work? So say you have a DSPS license, and you're wondering if you can get into K-12 settings and work. As it currently stands, you cannot. You must have a DPI license to work in an educational setting of K-12. So if you work with adults within a K-12 setting, then you can, with a DSPS license. The role of an educational interpreter is for working with children. Now, entities may require other restrictions as well. This is only a minimum requirement. So it's possible, some people may say, a doctor may request somebody who holds a permanent license or something like that. Other entities can requires certain other minimum requirements. So Wisconsin court interpreters are exempt from this.
So with the proposed law, we have different settings. As you remember, with the restricted license, there was the ability to renew for 2 terms and work wherever you wanted. You could work, it was up to you. But under the proposed law, we've actually taken away the restriction on how many times you renew, in which you can renew indefinitely, but we've also limited the settings. So under intermediate license for hearing interpreters, you cannot work in legal or mental health settings. No questions asked. Additionally, medical settings can be tricky. You can, as an intermediate hearing interpreter, go in and work in a medical setting if you are working with an advanced licensed interpreter, whether they are hearing or they are deaf. But alone, you may not work in medical settings. For the advanced hearing license, you are not allowed to work in legal settings unless you are on the state court roster. And as a committee, we thought that was interesting, that you didn't need to have a state license, but you could work in the courts. And we worked with Carmel Capati, and she agreed with us. She thought it was strange, but no one had asked her when the first licensure was established. No one brought it up to her. So we did. And we agreed together that they should have this minimal requirement. They should at least have our state license before they can come in and get on the state court roster. Under the proposed law for intermediate licensed deaf, you are not allowed to work in the legal settings unless you're on the state court roster. And in advanced deaf, it is the same restriction, no legal settings unless on the state court roster. Within our feedback, we saw that some people felt that intermediate licensed deaf interpreters should not be working in mental health settings. However, often mental health and legal situations do overlap. We are aware of that. And we also are aware that we already have a shortage of those interpreters in our community. And if you think about it, a deaf interpreter is almost always with a hearing interpreter who will have that experience in the setting. They're teaming with an advanced interpreter. So an intermediate deaf interpreter will still be working with an advanced hearing interpreter, and they would be allowed to go into those settings. And of course, our deaf interpreters, just like our hearing interpreters, must abide by the CPC, the Code of Professional Conduct, and know and recognize that when they get into situations that maybe they aren't qualified for, that they need to recuse themselves. You know you are responsible for making that decision. It's not just thinking, oh, I can do this is fine, I got this. No. You have to have the professional wherewithal, the knowledge, and really know your own skills to be able to make those decisions. And I don't know if you can see that at the bottom of the PowerPoint, you might be wondering what a legal setting exactly is, and that will be determined by the Sign Language Interpreter Examining Board, otherwise known as SLIB. But I know we've been talking about the board, and you're like, who is the board? So I'm going to go into that now. Currently, we have the Sign Language Interpreting Council, otherwise known as SLIC. And SLIC has no bite. They can't do anything. They have no real authority. Establishing the SLIB, the Sign Language Interpreter Examining Board, will establish more power and authority compared to SLIC. Under SLIC, the authority over licensure remains with DSPS, but they don't know anything about our field. And our council only can reach so far to really make a difference with DSPS, and we've noticed that over the last few years. So under the new proposed licensure, ta-da! We have decided to set up an examining board. And under the title of an examining board, it has different powers and rights and responsibilities than a council does. It can enforce, it can provide, it can deal out penalties, it oversees the license, it can approve what training for deaf interpreters looks like, additional certifications. The SLIB can also agree with other states for reciprocity agreements. So with our licensure having only 2 levels and maybe Illinois having 4 levels, SLIB can represent our state in making sure that we have reciprocity, and interpreters from Illinois coming in will make sure they meet our minimum requirements and vice versa. And of course, these out-of-state interpreters would still have to pay, and we would have to pay for their licensure. But it's just make sure we're all on the same page with our bordering states. The SLIB will also have the power to appoint certain members for the MOU committee, and they'll have other work as assigned. The composition of individuals on the SLIC versus the SLIB are a little bit different. Under SLIC, there are 4 deaf representatives, and at least one of those individuals must have graduated from a residential school and the other must have graduated from a mainstream public school. We need 2 licensed interpreters and 1 hearing consumer. And the person that appoints these individuals is the governor. They have to send this recommendation to the Senate for confirmation, and it has to be finally approved by the governor. And once the governor approves it, they become a member of SLIC. But under SLIB, it's different. Well, we'll have 7 individuals, and we decided to stay with an odd number just for voting purposes. We require 3 deaf individuals, but there is no alternate restriction in terms of they graduated from a deaf school or a public school. We just want individuals who are deaf to apply. We also require that there are 2 hearing advanced licensed interpreters, 1 deaf advanced licensed interpreter, and 1 hearing consumer. What's different about this board is that while it will still need to be approved by a governor, who doesn't really know who these people are and whether they would be good representation, WISRID and WAD now have the ability to be able to consult the governor. Additionally, the Senate will not be required to confirm our members because that process can take forever. And so the less red tape, the better. Our current law has enforcement and punishment written in. And right now it's a maximum of a $200 fine or 6 months in prison. Or both. However, that charge can only be brought up by the DA or DSPS. The DA meaning the district attorney. If an interpreter is working and they don't have a license, DSPS can send that interpreter license and ask them to stop. It's called a cease and desist letter. So as that interpreter, if I got that letter, I could look at it and be like, okay, and I could continue working. And we noticed that was feedback that we got from the community that we needed to change. So under SLIB, it's different. SLIB will work with the Division of Legal Services and Compliance under DSPS, meaning that if a complaint arises, SLIB will ask DLSC to investigate. After they investigate, they will send a report to SLIB, and SLIB can have a hearing, gather the information they need, and make a decision of what to do. And penalties are much more varied than before. And I'm sorry, I should clarify. They are penalties, and penalties sounds very negative. It sounds very bad. It sounds very punitive. And really, the law is proposing a minimum punishment. So let's say you are wasted and hungover and you show up for a job. It is clear to both the hearing and deaf consumers that this interpreter is obviously drunk or hungover. They can file a complaint. SLIB receives the complaint. And they might find out that yes, this individual did show up to work. The SLIB is not going to be like, you owe us $10,000, that's your fine. I mean, they could. They have that flexibility now. However, the goal is to give a minimum punishment. So maybe they might feel what kind of punishment fits the crime. So they're going to ask you, go to rehab and pay a certain amount of money. Or they might suspend your license. They're not almighty power of God. They are not going to just throw up fines like there's no tomorrow. Another situation. Let's say an interpreter stole money from a consumer. That's a serious offense. So, and then the board could say, okay, your punishment is to go to rehab because we think you're addicted to drugs. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. So SLIB has to be reasonable in what they decide. So with the restricted license, they could revoke it, they could suspend it. There's a lot of different options to match whatever situation has arisen. Again, we know we hate this, it depends. It depends. We hate that, we're not fans of that word, but in this case, it does. So let's say the board does say, you need to go to rehab. This is one of our penalties. And the interpreter says, no. We can take it to a higher level where it becomes a criminal charge, and we can take it to the courts. Either SLIB can represent themselves, the DA can represent us, or DSPS can. And that's where you could see a fine of $10,000, or up to 1 year in jail. So, yeah, follow what SLIB says. We saw a huge demand for this proposal of unlicensed practice. Because under the law and how it's written now, DSPS and LCRB couldn't really do much. So with working at LCRB, we were able to put this into the proposed law. And I'm gonna give you some time to read this. Basically, this says, if the board finds out an individual is working as an interpreter and is getting paid, they can send a cease and desist letter. If they find out that individual has not stopped working, they can take them to court. And the board, like I said, can represent themselves. Each offense can occur a fine of up to $10,000 or a 1 year in jail. So if you worked a whole week of 5 days, that's about $50,000 and the possibility of 5 years in jail. Because you've worked without a license. Again, what's nice about this is the board can represent themselves in court. We don't necessarily need DSPS. What's really unique about our board is that we are about 50%, we are made up of 50% of the consumers. With our board being majority consumers, deaf and hearing, compared to the 3 interpreters that we're required, the 2 hearing interpreters and the 1 deaf interpreter. The consumers will be in the majority whenever they voted. And we can't have it the other way around, because we don't want it to look like that we as interpreters are trying to clean out our field. And we want that power to be left with our consumers. I know Pam mentioned that one of the priorities that our committee had between WSRID and WAD was the MOU. And so under this law, we are establishing an MOU committee between DPI and DSPS. The goal is for them to come together to figure out whose licenses work where. And it is required within our proposed law to meet every 2 years. And this is who we are recommending to be on the MOU committee. Again, there are 7 representatives. Half of them will be picked by the SLEEP, and half of them will be picked by DPI Steph Cardigan.